You're tuning in to the Raised by Rentals program. This podcast will contain strong language and spoilers for decades-old media properties.
Join us.
Welcome, everybody. This is the podcast where we examine pop culture franchises of the VHS era and improv new stories, driving live into Season 5. Because while we'll always abide alive in the Cloud Drive archive, we'd hate to deprive you guys who prize our hijinks and jive and subscribe to derive a will to survive. So we've arrived at a time to revive the monkey shines where we connive to contrive tales to delight and affright and strive not to nosedive while we imagine how we might improve our favorite movies, TV, and games. I'm Josh.
I'm Mike.
And we were Raised by Rentals. Mike, welcome to episode 112, the first episode of season 5.
Woohoo! 112. Damn, have we already done that many?
I know, right? I gave up a long time ago, like mentioning what number episode it was, but I figured I needed to point that out because I was like, damn, like we sailed past episode 100 last season.
Yeah, I didn't even freaking realize. That's crazy.
Oh man, I gotta say too, it took me a really long time to write that because the challenge was to follow up on the intro I did for season 4, but there aren't that many words that rhyme with 5, so I was like,
I wasn't expecting it. I was just like, holy shit, wow, okay, cool.
I know I'm on Rhyme Zone trying to like use every word I can find, but I had to lean into some slant rhymes just to kind of bend the rules a little bit just to make it make some kind of sense.
Hey, it worked. It caught me off guard.
Thank you. Welcome everybody to season 5. As I said, we are back with another episode, another season of Raised by Rentals. And as this is the inaugural episode of our new season, we figured we would start off strong. Except then we weren't really sure that we wanted to start off strong. We always try to kick off the season with something that we think will get people excited, or at least it'll get us excited, get the juices flowing. Obviously our first episode, our first season ever, we came out of the gate with an idea that we thought was strong enough to not only kick off the season, but the whole podcast. Like, what can we talk about that will, allow us a chance to tell some fun stories and hopefully get the ball rolling on something fun with our Christmas the 13th episode. And then we followed that up in season 2. We kicked off with Ash Saves Christmas, which was kind of also the end of season 1. And then we did Centipede the Motion Picture right after that, which I thought was going to be really fun and, be a crowd pleaser because we always had fun, even very early on in our first season, turning silly things like board games and arcade games into like movie ideas.
I still like that Centipede episode. I don't care what any of our download numbers say. That's a good episode,
right,
damn it.
Right. And in season 3, I was like, we're going to come out the gate with Jay and Silent Bob meet Frankenstein. Like, what better way to get people listening to the episode? Just the title alone would suck me in if I saw that in my podcast feed,
Hell yeah.
Yeah. And then with our season 4, we've gone, on and on and over the last couple episodes talking about how we had like this blueprint, this plan for season 4. And we kicked it off with Escape from Earth, which was a big sci-fi blockbuster epic that was also a piece of a larger franchise that we knew we were going to get back to later. And it was a great way to, kind of kick the doors down with some Kurt Russell action.
Hell yeah.
So how do we follow that up? How do we go big? Do we do some kind of big giant action movie? Do we find some kind of like completely wild idea, something that would just get people to stop scrolling, on YouTube or their podcast feed because the title just jumps out at them? Do we go, shock and awe with it? And then, ultimately we're like, what? We decided that after how structured season 4 was and how much of a plan that we had, that we were hitting the milestones all year long, following up on previous, series and going back to the well with some of our ideas and bringing old characters back, that we wanted to just go completely wild with season 5. Let's break up the format, shake things up, try some new things we've never done before, do some more original stories. And while we were looking over this big long list that we have of all these ideas, we kept looking at, some of these ideas and thinking, that's a pretty cool idea. I'm not sure there's a whole episode there, but like, let's keep it on the list. And we kept doing doing that as we were going down. Like, yeah, I love that. Not sure there's a whole episode there, but let's keep it on the list. Maybe we can do a short story or something. And then it finally occurred to us that that would be a great episode to do, to have a clip show episode where instead of just having, one story where we try to improv something beginning, middle, and end, instead we just talk about some of these other ideas that we had. Some of them are abandoned ideas. Some of them have just been on the list for a while and we weren't sure what to do with them. And some of them were story ideas that we just really wanted to tell, but the time was never quite right. Some of them are just completely random things that we want to talk about, but yeah, that maybe they don't even fit in on the podcast, but we just wanted to talk about them. And so, in the spirit of shaking things up and being weird for season 5, we're like, fuck it. Like, let's just kick off the season with a clip show episode, something that typically would be the last episode of a TV sitcom, for example, or some kind of a filler episode where, a sitcom is running behind schedule to deliver their like 27 episodes in a season. And so, they film 5 minutes of a framing sequence of, the character sitting around on the couch saying, remember that time? And then they play clips, So
we're kicking things off with a clip show.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and it also kind of takes the pressure off. You know what? Like, let's just get started. We'll kick off the season. We'll throw some of these ideas out there, and who knows? Maybe some of these will end up becoming something bigger. Maybe some of these, as we chat through them, we'll realize, hey, there's something there. Like, let's come back to this one. Maybe we were wrong about that one, not being long enough or not being strong enough. But yeah, I think it would be fun. Especially since we did so many of these like long kind of epic episodes at the end of the last season, to just kind of, rapid fire through a couple of shorter ideas.
Plus, I feel like it gives the listeners a chance to be like, to kind of see a little peek behind the curtain, see what stuff that we had planned. And if there is something that we discuss here today that they're like, you know what, I really want a whole episode about that, let us know. Because, if there is legs, maybe we can find them. Maybe we can figure it out and do a whole episode.
Yeah, absolutely. We had our morgue file vote at the end of season 3. We did was it a Super Gushers or a Rental Rant? One of those non-improv specials, and we went through our top 10 dead episode ideas to go through some things that we had on our catalog, on our list of things that we wanted to do or were planning on doing that we thought were strong enough, but they just never quite worked out. So we just figured, hey, let's reveal them to the audience, have a chance to talk about them a little bit. Some of them I thought, we got a little excited about while we were talking about it, like, maybe this was better than I thought. And then, of course, one of them being the Weekend at Bernie's, where Bernie is a zombie. We did, as we promised, turn into a full-length episode in season 4 with Weekend at Bitey's. So this is, kind of going back to that same concept. We're going to go back through some of these other ideas. I'm not necessarily saying that these are dead ideas we were never going to get to. These are actually things that we wanted to get to, but the time just never quite seems right. Or again, like, we're not sure that there's really enough there, in terms of like, we need some meat on the bone. So this is the perfect opportunity, to kind of go through some of these, and just like you said, kind of peel the curtain back a little bit. And it also gives us a chance, I think, to kind of pull back the curtain to the audience in terms of how we decide on ideas for episodes, how we decide on what the topic is going to be, where, one of us has an idea, we pose it to the other one, and then we usually have like some back and forth where it's like, okay, cool, like this is going somewhere. It's starting to spin into something. So let's kind of pause it and, get back to it live on the episode, because we try to improv whenever we can. And sometimes we throw an idea out and it's like, okay, whatever.
I feel like this is the garbage soup episode where it's like, everyone does this once in a while with you look at the contents of your fridge and it's like, oh, I got to use these veggies and we only got that little bit of chicken left. Like, what can I make out of? Oh, I'm just gonna make a big soup. I'm gonna make a pot of stew. So yeah, you chop up what you got, you throw it all together, and you make a meal out of it. We're kind of doing that with our ideas here. We got a bunch of ideas that we're not 100% sure that they're there's a lot there, but they're still good. It's just a matter of we got to use them somewhere.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
We're gonna throw it all together and see what sticks.
Yeah, absolutely. I love doing that. I love, cutting the eyes off of old potatoes and like, hey, this pepper is a little wrinkly and soft, but if you
You
take it,
boil it.
yeah, exactly. Like no one will ever know. Like I don't want to waste food,
Hell yeah, dude. that I was literally just discussing that earlier tonight because I'll be making dinner tomorrow night. My wife's handling it tonight, and tomorrow I'm gonna cook. And I was like, we have a bunch of veggies that they need to be used this week. Like they're not bad, but that's just like they're getting okay. They've been in there for a few days already. They're getting a little wrinkly. Like some of the peppers. Like I'm gonna make like a cabbage stew kind of thing.
Yeah,
So it's like, yeah, we need to use them.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and just as I was saying before about the structure of the show in terms of a clip show, I think everybody understands what I'm talking about. But just in case, we're talking about this concept that was really popular. Well, it's been around for a while, but I tend to think of it as being really popular in the heyday of the television sitcom, where as I mentioned, you would have a season of a sitcom. And these days, it's pretty common for, like, say for example, streaming TV, you'll have 6 episodes or 8 episodes, and for a while I think 13 was the standard number, right? I think
Right.
for a streaming or online show where you might get like 45-minute episodes. But in the days
Mhm.
of broadcast TV, when broadcast TV was king, sitcom episodes would run in a 30-minute time slot minus commercials. So you didn't really have a lot of screen time to tell a story, but they were also expecting that show to be on, every Thursday or, every Friday night for TGIF or whatever.
Mhm.
And it would run all season. And you would end up with seasons that had, 20 or 30 episodes. And that's great for developing and keeping an audience, but what happens inevitably is, one of a few things. Either you have a TV show that is telling a long running story, and now you're so far into the season that it helps to remind your audience where you've been so far. And then you do like a recap episode where the characters, there's some conceit in the story where they get to sit around and explain and talk about, like, oh, we've battled through all of the, the trials and tribulations to get here and, to face the villain or whatever it is. And then they kind of show
Mhm.
clips from the previous episodes to kind of catch people up. And
Yep.
sometimes you would see that in old movies, like especially from the 80s, where, when like Friday the 13th Part 2 comes out, and then there's like clips from the first movie that they show to catch you up,
Like the first 15 minutes of screen time is old footage.
Yeah, exactly. And another situation might be, one that I alluded to where, producing 27 episodes of a sitcom takes a lot of time. And I've read that showrunners used to purposely plan a clip show or a recap episode for when they were running behind schedule, because they would have to deliver so many episodes before the season launches, and sometimes they're still filming while the season has already begun. And then, they're kind of under the gun when it comes to the schedule. So they might say, okay, we're starting to run behind schedule, so we need to save a couple of weeks or a couple of days of filming time somewhere. And then they would take that clip show episode that they already planned, and they would stick it in to wherever they need to save time, because they could have the actors sitting around talking, in a living room or at their local coffee shop or wherever the characters like to hang out. And it's the same thing where, they just kind of, they start joking and say, oh, hey, remember that time? And then you have a little flashback. Oh yeah, I remember that, but that reminds me of this other time. And you have a little flashback,
Mhm.
and so you get the framing sequence of them kind of sitting around chatting about their lives while you get to see these clips. And I used to always really enjoy clip shows like that, because you get to revisit, jokes and scenes from earlier in the season, especially since, again, talking about broadcast TV, you could watch reruns, but if it was the current season, you didn't really always have a way of going back and watching things again.
Yeah. Sometimes it would literally be like a year before you would see an episode again. So, you would if it was like a favorite episode, sometimes you just want to see the fun stuff. You want to see the highlight reels. Um so I know like a ton of like Seinfeld. I know they did that famously, and I mean almost every freaking sitcom of the 80s and 90s had a clip show. But like I don't know about you, but I was a huge Seinfeld nut
Oh yeah,
back
me
in the
too.
day. Yeah, so it's like, when they did I forget what episode it was, but when they did their clip show, it was just like it was all the highlights of some of the best episodes, and it was just like, oh, this is great. So, and again, that was back in the day when you didn't always get to see reruns.
Yeah, exactly. And Seinfeld is an interesting example because the last episode of Seinfeld, the final season finale, has gone down in history, I think, as it's considered to be one of the worst finales of all time. I don't know that I agree
Hmm.
with that, but that's the
Oh, I
reputation that it
highly
has.
disagree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it too, but that last episode, and this is kind of the third scenario that I was talking about, where they decided to end that show, and some other TV shows have done it as well, where they look back fondly, or whatever other adjective, they look back on things that happened throughout the whole run of the show, and you get to revisit some of those clips, and of course there was a whole framing device in that final episode that was itself its own story. It wasn't just characters sitting around, but it was really fun as a way to cap off the entire run of the show, to get to go back and revisit some of those old moments. And I personally really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
But they actually had another clip show. I think it was right before that one, where they did a clip show, and this is an interesting one. It was called The Chronicle, where they did a clip show, but they included clips from things that weren't actually in the final episodes. They were using like alternate takes, and in some cases deleted scenes or bloopers, and it was a way for them to show the audience some more fun things that they had done. So they did the same kind of device of, hey, remember that time, but it was stuff that we hadn't necessarily seen before because it might have been a deleted scene or an outtake.
That's awesome. See, yeah, I freaking South Park kind of did a play on that in, I want to say it was their second season, where they were kind of doing like a clip show of episodes from part one, where they were hanging on the cliff side, like the bus that they were on was about to like fall over a cliff, so all the kids were just like reminiscing while they were waiting for their bus driver to return. And every time the memory ended differently, so it was like you saw the scene, but then they were like, and then this other thing happened. It always somehow ended up with ice cream, with them getting ice cream. And it was like, so you saw an old clip, but then a completely new clip that had nothing to do with the old clip, and they're acting as if it did.
Yeah.
And then it all turned out to be, Cartman was having a bad dream. But it's it was the Dallas ending on top of the clip show. It was a very funny joke.
Yeah, I love that. I actually really like it when animated shows do clip shows, because they tend to, again, either use clips, their outtakes, or maybe from previous episodes we hadn't seen before. But a lot of times, because shows like The Simpsons is a really good example. It's a comedy show, so they kind of make fun in this metafictional way of the whole concept of a clip show, and they'll do a clip show, but it's actually just like it's flashbacks to the characters, but nothing that we've actually seen before. So they're actually animating an entire new episode and just pretending that it's a clip show.
Right.
And I'm sure the hosts of So It's Come to This, a Simpsons Family podcast, our friends and fellow Red Panthers, will hopefully reach out to us and correct us, and or let us know like what the real story is. But there is an episode of The Simpsons that, and I'm assuming that's where the title of the podcast comes from, but the episode is called So It's Come to This, a Simpsons Clip Show, where,
Hmm.
that was one of those episodes where, again, I'm assuming because I'm not a Simpsons super fan, so I don't know if those were all original or if they just animated new ones, but I think that's, in addition to the Seinfeld finale, I think that clip show from The Simpsons is probably one of the most famous ones.
I agreed. 100%.
Yeah. So with that being said, we're going to do our own. And I think ours is going to be very much, along the lines of that, because none of these are outtakes. None of these are, are bloopers. None of these are things that we've seen before in previous episodes. These are all new things that are, fresh to the podcast. But to you and I, we're kind of looking back on, oh yeah, remember that idea?
Exactly. Remember that time?
Yeah, remember that time?
Oh, I remember.
So I think I want to kick it off by talking about the Great Pumpkin again. We had a
Hmm.
really fun Halloween special in the last season. I know you and I had an absolute ball with it. and it was one of the episodes we got the most positive feedback from. Our longest episode ever at this point, which of course was just The Great Pumpkin. And that in that episode we talked a lot. In that episode, and then in some of the follow-up episodes, especially our our year in review when we did We Love Christmas and Christmas Loves Us Back, and we talked about how we had this other idea that we wanted to do involving the Great Pumpkin, and we were working on it for a little while, and it never really gelled, and partly because we couldn't get away from the idea of thinking, well, we should just do the Peanuts characters as the Great Pumpkin. Like we should tell a story about Peanuts that follows up on the lore of the Great Pumpkin. But at first we were hesitant because like it's the Great Pumpkin. Charlie Brown is such a perfect piece of film that aside from doing an improv ruin type episode, we weren't sure that we wanted to go there,
Exactly.
right? And so it was like, okay, so we eventually decided, okay, we're just going to sack up and do it. We're going to, we're going to take the risk. We're going to tell the story about what happens when, Linus Van Pelt grows up is still obsessed or becomes obsessed all over again about the Great Pumpkin. And, we turned it into this really fun horror story. But what was that original idea? And so let's talk about it right now. And, let's see if we can kind of, I don't know, let's see if we can flesh it out a little bit and see what happens.
Yeah, I'm down.
So the original idea came from a title, as a lot of our episodes do. Probably more than I should admit. A lot of our episodes are, one of us comes up with something that is a funny episode title, and then we just decide, oh well, we have to do something with that.
Yep.
Uh,
Now, to be fair, I'm curious to know like how many creatives work that way, because I feel like sometimes all you need is that seed, that just plant that one little seed of an idea, and it gives you the box to grow in. It's like we've talked about this many times when it comes to artistic endeavors. Sometimes having rules and regulations and boundaries make you be more creative. So if when we come up with like a title, it's like, okay, now we have to fit a story around that
yeah.
title. Sometimes it forces you to come up with some outlandishly fun ideas. So yeah, I love creating that way, and you and I have done that for fucking years. Like even
hmm
going back to the comic book days, like one of us would just be like, it would be a funny title, and you just throw it out, and we would come up with a story around it. So I'd be curious to know how many creatives actually work like that.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And just a couple of examples from our last few seasons that stick out. Both good and bad. One example of an episode that we did for the title was Turkey Hands. That's the most recent one.
Yep.
uh, but that was also there was a bit of a concept there, right? We explained that in the episode how it came out of a joke in one of the Boogeyman's Closet episodes. And
Hmm.
it was just such a funny phrase, turkey hands. But prior to that, we had stuff like "Don't tell mom the babysitter got whacked," which I just thought was
Yep.
funny. And but then kind of on the flip side of that was we came up with the town that dreaded Festivus, which
Hmm.
originally was the town that dreaded something. Like we should put in like a holiday, like the town that dreaded Easter. I think was one of the original concepts, and then
Yep.
we kind of workshopped it, and then one of us thought Festivus was just the funniest thing. Ha, that's a really funny title. And then we went and did the episode, and we struggled with it a little bit. You know,
Oh yeah.
I like what we came up with at the end, but as we revealed before, like that was almost the crash and burn episode because we had a point where we kind of got stuck and had to like stop and like figure it out. But I'm still happy that we got that title in the feed. I get to see it when I scroll back.
Oh hell yeah. And I think with that one and a couple other ones where we've come close to doing the crash and burn, a lot of times it's time related because we know like okay, we have a limited amount of time to record, and then it's like fuck, we don't want to have to like split this up, especially cuz we both have very busy schedules. So if we can't complete the episode in the allotted time, we might not be able to come back to it for like 2 or 3 days. And it's like
Yep.
it's really hard to improv a story when you're not allowed to think about it. So you kind of have to just be like, no, 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 put it out of your head. Don't, and then come back to it later and have to remember what you already talked about. Like, so that's really hard to do. So I feel like with the Town That Dreaded Festivus, that was where we hit that wall, because it was coming up on 8 o'clock and we realized, like, fuck, we're not even halfway through the story yet. Like, how do we do this? And we
Hmm.
started racing and we ran right into a wall.
Yeah, exactly. And we kind of talked about how we let ourselves off the hook with that one because we definitely, it should have been a crash and burn, but again, we let ourselves off the hook because it wasn't that the story ran into the wall, it was just it was the time. And so I'm sure that it'll happen at some point where, without a time crunch, we'll be trucking along trying to tell a story, and at some point, we're just going to be like, yeah, dude, like I don't know what comes next.
Yep.
And that'll be it. I'm sure it'll happen eventually. So to not bury the lead any further, in this case, the title that we came up with was "It's the Great Pumpkin, John McClane." 'Cause we were just trying to think of like fun like sequel ideas, and I think it came out of thinking about Die Hard as a Christmas movie, and one of us, it was probably you, said something about how it would have been funny if for the sequels they did the same concept but with a different holiday.
Right.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
oh yeah, and the conversation is kind of coming back to me now. We were talking about how it was kind of funny how after Die Hard, after the success of Die Hard, there were so many other movies that came out of Hollywood that were so obviously, based on Die Hard, to the point where it was really easy to explain a movie to somebody like, oh, this is Speed, it's Die Hard on a bus, or this is Die
Yep.
Hard on a boat, this is Die Hard on a plane,
Exactly.
And then you were like, well, they should have done holidays. It could have been like, it's Die Hard at Easter. This is Die Hard at Halloween. And, of course, we both love Halloween. So it's like,
Hmm.
hang on a second. Like, what what would that have been? Let's think about that for a minute.
This poor bastard is gonna have all of his holidays ruined.
Right? And it didn't really even have anything to do with the Great Pumpkin other than it was just a really funny title. But, we kind of talked about it. And the idea was that you have John McClane who goes to another type of party. Again, you look at the same structure as the first movie. He went to a Christmas party, and then, terrorists ruined the day, and then he has to save the day. So in this case, for some reason, he goes to a Halloween party. And of course, it's a costume party, right? Like a masquerade. And what we said was, we were like, okay, so these like terrorists are gonna try to infiltrate the party. I don't think we ever figured out like where the party was. Is it because of Holly's job again, or is it maybe it's like the policeman's ball or something. It's all these cops at like a Halloween party, and these criminals come in, and they want to hold the cops hostage or do something, and so they plant a bomb somewhere, and it's some of the characters, maybe not everybody, so there's not a panic, but somebody finds out that, hey, there's a bomb, and John McClane, of course, is one of the characters who knows that there's a bomb, and he doesn't want to start a panic either, so he's trying to figure out where the bomb is, who planted it, but more importantly, who in this party full of people in costume is actually one of these terrorists, versus the people who are the guests who are there, who are like the real cops.
Right. You know what? Okay, hold on. Let's take a step back and examine this for a second, because you got the light bulbs going off now. So picture, we've both seen the movie Trick or Treat.
Hmm.
Um, Picture how that town was, how they had the huge Halloween party in like the center of town. Like everybody was there. There was a parade. There was all sorts of fun like Halloween activities going on. And there's the scene where we see the principal acting like a vampire, like literally killing somebody in the crowd and nobody notices.
Hmm.
Also, not to bring us down here with like real world stuff, but like how many times have there been like bombs planted at major events, like
Hmm.
things where a lot of people were going to be there? So let's take that concept. Maybe it's, maybe it's like another relative of Hans. I don't know. But, we have some reason why somebody would want to plant a bomb and like literally just cause chaos. Not like we're out to demand money. We're out. It's literally, we are going to cause as much destruction as possible and watch as your city burns. So it could be like, so whatever city, pick a, LA or New York or whatever, have a big Halloween festival going on, right? And the cops get a tip off that somewhere in the festival there are bombs planted, and they have until, like, maybe they have a time limit. It's like, you have until 10 p.m., to like find the bombs. Otherwise, it will cause, mass destruction. And maybe there's no way they can get everybody out in time. It's one of those things where they find out and they only got like an hour or something. So we'll do like the 24 thing where it's the ticking clock, which I hate, but we'll
Right.
we'll do that. But just imagine how fun this could be, because you could have like John McClane, and like we could even throw like, Reginald Val Johnson. We talk about him all the time. Throw him as one of the fucking cops,
Mhm.
trying to like go through the crowd, not scare anybody, find out who the bad guys are, find the bombs to stop it, and save the day. But there could be so many opportunities for tension and like fun little like fights in alleyways and shit, where it's like, oh, that guy dressed like Linus is running away, go get him, that type of thing. Like,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know, and of course, the bomb would be planted in pumpkins all around the festival.
Oh,
So it would
yep.
make sense of, it's the Great Pumpkin, John McClane. Like, maybe like there's a big, massive jack-o'-lantern or something. Like, that's where the trigger switch is. Or so, it could obviously all play into the title, but I think it would be fun to have this series of, bombs planted, and they have to stop them in the amount of, in like a certain amount of time.
Yeah,
I think it'd
yeah.
be cool.
I love that. Yeah, actually, my light bulbs are kind of going off now too, thinking about it, because and this is not something that really we hadn't gone down this path before when we chatted about this. This is fun.
Not at all.
I like this idea, and I just kind of randomly threw out this idea about it being like a cop party, just because John McClane's a cop, and I'm like, well, why would he be there? Would he really ever go to his wife's work party ever again?
Probably not.
Um, but it would be interesting if it was in LA and we had Reginald Vell Johnson. We had Officer Al Powell, and he's also there. And we could you mentioned like, oh, some other brother. Well, we had Hans Gruber's brother show up in Die Hard 3 or Die Hard with a Vengeance. Spoiler alert for a decades old movie. But
Right.
it would have been interesting if what if it was Carl, the terrorist, the real hair metal looking guy that Al Powell shoots at the very end of the first movie. He was like, the kind of the head honcho of all the thugs, and his brother was the first terrorist that John McClane kills, and then he sends him down the elevator in the sweatshirt that says "Ho ho ho, now I have a shotgun,"
Hmm.
or "Now I have a machine gun." So what if they had another brother? What if there was some other brother who, was also a terrorist, and he wants revenge on both John and Al because they both essentially
Ah.
killed his brother. So we can make it so that, what if Al's family, now remember, Al Powell said that he was buying all those Twinkies for his wife. She's pregnant, and I,
Right.
I know that there are some movie theorists out there who don't think that Al was really married and he was just making up an excuse to buy a bunch of Twinkies. But because
Right.
he's a big gentleman. But
I like my Twinkies.
right, hell, I like Twinkies too. My wife Christina bought a box of Twinkies for the kids for Christmas, kind of as a joke, because
Mhm.
they've never had them, and they always think of them as those disgusting things that will survive a nuclear war along with cockroaches, like the stereotypes. And
Right. Right.
but I ended up eating some of them because I'm like, man, these things are pretty good.
I literally haven't had a Twinkie in probably about 10 years, but I do remember, God, this was like when Caleb was little. We went to Ollie's, and they had like, it was some seasonal Twinkie. I think it was like a Christmas one. There was like a box that had, chocolate ones and vanilla ones in the same box.
Hmm.
And, he was like, "Ooh, Twinkies." And we're like, "Yeah, let's get Twinkies." And I'm like, "I haven't had a fucking Twinkie in forever." I ended up eating like half that box.
Yeah,
Like, it
they're
was
good.
it was not healthy, but I was like, "Damn it, Twinkies are good."
They are. They're not good for you, but they're good. But
Yep.
But yeah, anyway, so what if Al Powell's wife gets like a death threat or like a letter in the mail, basically saying something, basically like laying out the plan, that your husband will die at midnight or something. And she, being a cop's wife, she doesn't want to like cause a panic, but maybe she calls the police. Hell, maybe she calls, John McClane and is like, "Oh, you got to help him." And so that kind of kicks off this terrorist threat where John and some other people know about the bombs, but not everybody at the party does. So they can kind of like keep it chill. And then you'd have this cool opportunity for like a B story where Al Powell is at the party too, and he's secretly sneaking people out of the party while John is looking for the bombs and also trying to figure out if any of the people there in masks are like secretly terrorists.
Well, and maybe they could even do something like, if you try to evacuate, like if you try to get everybody out of the party, we'll just detonate all the bombs at once and we will kill everybody.
Yeah, there you go.
You know,
Yeah.
it could be something like that. So there's a reason why they're not just like, hey, party's canceled, get the fuck out.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, exactly.
you know, so it's like we'll be watching type of thing. So you don't know like where they are in, like they'll be there, they'll be around, they'll be watching. So you got to figure like all of the buildings in the area. Like, is there someone like keeping an eye on them? So we could have like you said, the B story. We could have a whole nother story where there's like other cops like going through like the nearby buildings, like looking for people, and maybe they could even find like you could have like a sniper firefight or so. Like there's so many like chances for good action moments where you could have like the tense party sequence where you don't know who anybody is, like, and John McClane could be walking around in his like, I keep picturing Great Pumpkin stuff because obviously the title, like
Hmm.
I'm picturing him dressed up like the Charlie Brown ghost, like walking around,
Yeah.
with all the little eye holes, kind of trying to check out, who's there. And then we could have like another group of cops or like a SWAT team or something like going through the buildings and make like maybe they find like some of the terrorists there and they get into a firefight, and then it's like it alerts the the terrorists with the bombs, and maybe they're like, if you do this again we're gonna set it off, blah blah blah. Like there's so many chances for tense action moments with a story like this.
Oh yeah, absolutely too. And then, kind of tense, quieter moments too, like I mentioned, of trying to figure out if any of the people in the crowd are terrorists. And if you have this idea where Al is trying to sneak people out, and maybe he
Hmm.
does, maybe he's able to, like, he goes into like say a bathroom, there's a few people in there, and he's like, like, go through the ceiling, quick, quick, like, just trust me, just trust me. And then, but like, you can only get a few people out that way. So, but
Right.
it sort of like shows to the audience kind of what he's doing. But then you could have this scene where he's milling around by one of the exit doors, kind of scoping it out, like, could this work? Could I open this door? And maybe it's over by like the table with the punch and the snacks. And there's this guy who's just kind of hanging out over there, and Al starts to become suspicious. And then while Al's kind of hanging out, oh, just getting some more punch, he notices that when this guy turns, it's like, oh, I can see he's got like the little like handle of like a pistol that's like sticking out under his robe or his part of his costume, whatever. So Al kind of, he catches onto it, and then he can maybe like call the guy over or make some big scene of like, oh, damn, I spilled the punch. Oops, sorry about that. And then there's like this little comedic moment of of slapstick business, but he can kind of like conk the terrorist on the head and like stick him under the table, with like a tablecloth to hide him, and then he can like sneak a few people out the door, and that would be the moment
Hmm.
where he would get a hold of John, he would radio him or kind of casually make his way over to where John is, whatever, and he could kind of whisper to him and let him know like, okay, it was the guy in, and this would be funny if it was sort of some kind of a theme that would give them away, like, oh, the guy in the, hell, maybe it was Peanuts characters. Oh, the guy in the Charlie Brown costume, he had a gun, he
Yeah.
was under the table, and then John looks around and there's somebody in like a Linus costume or somebody in like a Snoopy costume, and then he kind of,
Yes.
and then he can kind of sneak around and try to take those guys out without causing a scene or letting tipping off the other terrorists. So eventually the lid will be blown off and it'll be all out action and whatever. But you got to have these kind of like tense moments where first they don't know, then they figure it out, and then they got to take them down one by one.
Absolutely. I mean, that would be a fun movie.
Yeah, 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 and I think that's as far as we need to go with it. But like, it would have been a fun concept, and I think we could have made a good Halloween episode out of that. But I'm really glad that we went the route that we went with.
Completely agree, because honestly, the Great Pumpkin, was probably one of my favorite episodes last year. And there's a lot of episodes last year that I really liked,
Yeah.
but man, I had a lot of fun with that one. And it's one of the few, like, we don't always go beat by beat through a story. Like, a lot of times we'll hit certain beats and then we'll kind of like speed ahead a little bit and hit certain beats. But like that one, we really did take the time to go through scene by scene, and I really enjoyed it. Like, it's one of the, and I'm not, not going to sit here and keep stroking our egos, but man, like, it's one of the few ones from last year that I've listened to a few times now, because it's a fun story.
It is, yeah. And we said it before when we were stroking our own egos on the last episode that I do think that season 4 as a whole, as a season, was the strongest
Mhm.
by far. Some of my favorite
Agreed.
episodes are in earlier seasons, but part of what makes season 4 so strong, again, we've mentioned it many times, is we had this plan and we executed it, I think, successfully. But along the way, some of the episodes like Space Vietnam and the Muppet Chainsaw Massacre and the Great Pumpkin, like they really just stood out as like, okay, these are high points.
Yeah, totally agree.
So, next clip, right, is another idea, and I'll tee this one up, and maybe you can do the next one. But
Mhm.
this is another idea that we did talk about and wanted to make it into an episode, but we just couldn't ever figure it out. We didn't even get as far as the basic pitch that we had for It's the Great Pumpkin, John McClane. And we did actually mention it on our Morgue File episode at the end of season 3. It was one of the top 10 dead episode ideas. And I mention it here because I couldn't help but keep thinking about it, right? Something that I still
Mhm.
wanted to do. And that was, we talked about doing a Lost Boys TV spin-off about the Frog Brothers.
Yes.
And, I had mentioned how I had a title for it. I had wanted to have my brother come on as a guest because he's a big Lost Boys fan. We used to watch that all the time when we were kids. But, we kept talking about it and trying to think about, well, I don't know that I care about the Frog Brothers,
Right.
or is there really enough there? I mean, they're great characters, and the way that they're portrayed in the movie is great. That's Corey Feldman and the other guy. I don't know who the other actor is, but they play Edgar and Alan Frog, the vampire hunters who run a comic book store, uh,
Mhm.
and so I was sitting here one day thinking about it, like, man, that still would be fun. And it occurred to me that the problem was focusing on the Frog Brothers. And as soon as I
Yeah.
started thinking, well, what if we focused on some other characters? Like, what if it was not a Frog Brothers show, but just a Lost Boys show? And then I started thinking, oh, okay, yes, there's something here, you know? Um,
Oh, absolutely.
and so what I thought of was this would work out really well as like an HBO or Showtime, original programming show. It's like in the early 90s when the early days of these long form episode TV shows that are so common now, but
Right.
back in the day, you'd have shows on HBO like Oz, or The Sopranos was obviously later in the 90s, but stuff like that where it was considered like premier TV.
Right.
And because it was on a cable station like HBO or Showtime, uh, I always think of Queer as Folk as like the one Showtime show that I think of all the time. But you could
Mhm.
have adult situations and swearing, and it was an adult show. Hell, even the Spawn animated show on HBO,
Yes.
was like high R-rated or PG-13 rated.
I'm still mad that show never got an ending. Like, I have the box set, and man, I was so excited for the next season, and it just never happened.
Yeah, yeah, real pain. So I thought, let's do a TV show, and I love this title. So we have a TV show called All the Damn Vampires.
It
um,
really is a fun title there. I like that.
it's a great title. Um, but we focus more on the vampires. And again, it seems so obvious now that I say it, but for a while I was like, Frog Brothers, Frog Brothers. Like, no, no, it's called All the Damn Vampires. Let's talk about vampires. uh, and so my thought was it would be a fun kind of anthology show where you'd have 6 or 8 episodes, and you have each episode tell a different standalone story that is in the world of the Lost Boys. It could be a
Right.
prequel or just take place in a different part of the world, whatever. Just tell a story about some other vampire interaction. And then that opens up all kinds of possibilities.
Right. Well, because yeah, it's basically, not to be like, Supernatural or Buffy or anything, but it's like villain of the week type of thing, where you
Hmm.
you pick a new type of vampire, you give a reason why the vampire is there or what they're doing, and then you have to find a way to stop them. And that gives you so many opportunities to bring in like guest actors, like, that's, oh, this week it's going to be, I don't know, pick random star from the 90s, like, I don't know, off the top of my head, just like Sam Jackson is a vampire,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like it gives you the opportunity to do stuff like that, and that would be a really fun way to get viewers excited. Is like, oh, one of my favorite actors is going to be in this TV show, and like, it's a violent adult, R-rated show. It's like, ooh, let's see what they're going to do, that type
Yeah.
of thing.
Oh yeah, no, that's a great idea. I like that. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, you could have, somebody. You'd have these maybe not like the biggest celebrity stars of the
Hmm.
time, but you'd have people that would get, the casual reader to tune in. You'd get somebody, like a Gina Davis or maybe a Patrick Swayze or someone like that,
Yeah.
who would be like the celebrity guest star this episode, and it would be, are they going to be a vampire? Are they going to be something else? And it would be fun. And you mentioned things like Supernatural and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and that's the perfect vibe, right? Also shows like uh, the X Files, right? Which I think would be
Yes.
the perfect kind of approach here. And it would be fun a if there was an overarching story that you would see build through the season. It wouldn't have to be anything really complicated, just something where while every episode is episodic, you're kind of building towards something, right?
I'm sorry. I have to interject something real quick because you said something that fired off light bulbs for me and made me kind of giddy. You mentioned the X Files, and like if the timing of this show was like mid to late 90s. Imagine an X Files crossover with it, where Scully and Mulder are investigating some kind of like murders in Santa. Was it Santa Carla? Was
Yeah,
that where
Santa
they were?
Carla,
Or
murder
Santa?
capital
Yeah.
of the world.
So that's right. So it's been a while since I watched Lost Boys, but yeah. So like they're investigating like some kind of like weird thing that happened in Santa Carla, and of course Mulder's going to be like, "It's vampires, Scully. It's vampires," and she's going to be like, "There's a logical explanation," and have like maybe it could literally be the one thing that, like the 1 week where a vampire isn't the culprit, it actually is like some kind of murderer or something, but there were vampires still there.
Yeah.
So it's like
Yeah.
Mulder was right but not. Like I think that would be
Yeah.
really fun.
No, I fucking love that. That's perfect. That would be the perfect thing to do right in the middle of the season. Okay, hang on.
Hmm.
Put a pin in that for a second. So, like the whole structure of the whole season just like fell into place for me, right? The light bulbs. So, the first episode, you have it pick up very shortly after the movie, right? And for those who are listening who don't remember or aren't familiar with Lost Boys, sorry to spoil the ending, but at the end of the movie, the gang of metal rocker looking guys who are vampires led by David, played by Kiefer Sutherland, they're all killed by our main characters, Sam and Max, the brothers, played by, is it Michael Patrick and then Corey Haim, and
Yes.
and then of course the Frog brothers are there with them, and then they think that David is the head vampire because he's the leader of this crew, but they believe the lore that they believe is that when you kill the head vampire, the other vampires that were created by the head vampire should revert to being human. But when they killed David, Michael, who was becoming a vampire, and the others like Star and Laddie, like they didn't revert. And then it's revealed that Max, the local businessman who owns the video rental store, who had been dating Sam and Michael's mother, he turns out to be the head vampire, and he had been kind of orchestrating all of this to, create a family for himself. And so when he's killed, voila, Michael and Star and Laddie, they all become human again. But I thought it would be interesting if we kind of picked up after that and, the Frog Brothers go kind of back to their regular life. They run a comic book store. Their parents are never around. There's a joke in the movie where they're trying to explaining to Sam that they're actually vampire hunters, even though they appear to be teenagers who just run a comic book store for our folks. Uh,
Hmm.
um, and it would be fun to then kind of explore and find out more about them and their life. So they kind of would be the focus of that first episode. And it come to find out that their parents are actually not around at all, that they really do just run this comic book store all by themselves, even though they're teenagers. They're living by themselves. Maybe we can show that they just live in the back of the store and there's like this like shitty office with like two mattresses on the floor. And imagine, a teenage boy bachelor pad and how like gross it would be, you know?
Right.
um, and then at some point, like soon thereafter, they notice that there are people who are still going missing around the Santa Carla boardwalk. And it had been established in the movie that a lot of people go missing in Santa Carla because obviously, the vampires, right? They're being abducted and murdered. But why are there people still going missing? And then they start to investigate that because they think that there's more vampires and they kind of suit up for like we're on for another vampire hunt, you know?
Well,
um,
and even at the end of the first movie, like the grandpa, talks about like that's the one problem with Santa Carla is all the damn vampires. That's where the title of the show comes from. So the concept is like people who live there are kind of aware. So it's like they kind of know, vampires are a thing. So like it seems like there was way more than just Max and his brood. Like there
mhm.
were other vampires in that area. So yeah, it would make perfect sense that there's still people go like again from a kid's point of view, they're gonna be like, "Hey, we won, it's over." But it's like, is it ever really over? Is trouble ever really gone?
Yep.
Like just in reality, like how many times in your life it's like, okay, that problem is done. It's not like you're gonna not have problems again. There's still gonna be problems.
Right.
So it's like the idea that like, yeah, people are still missing. They're gonna be like, wait, what? And then realize how big this vampire thing actually is.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the whole gist of the whole show. It's exactly what you just said, that the the world of the vampires is way bigger than just Max and what he was trying to do. And yeah,
Mhm.
Max might have created the vampires who then created Star and Laddie and Michael, but Max can't be the only one. And that becomes very clear to Edgar and Allan. Let's be honest. I mean, they're not the brightest bulbs in the box,
No.
and they were very single-mindedly going after David and his crew and then Max. And so for them to realize that this is a much bigger thing, it would like give them their mission, and that would be the perfect way to kick off the season, where we know that they're going to go hunt for vampires. But then what we do is, since I mentioned it's kind of an anthology show, is the next episode we do a different story. And I think we still focus on the Frog Brothers, but we tell a story in a different way. And I think we do a prequel. We do like a flashback episode where we see Edgar and Allan when they're much younger. I don't know exactly how young. I'm just making this up, so I don't know what the story is. But what I'm saying is we kind of do an origin story for them. How do they end up running a comic book store by themselves? Why are their parents gone? Why do they know about vampires and like want to hunt them? Why do they believe this bullshit in the comic books about vampires that they read? And it's
Right.
because there was an incident when they were younger where they witnessed their parents get killed by vampires. Like they were undetected some way, like hiding under the bed or whatever. And they see the vampires. It's not like their parents just disappear one day. They know that it's real, and they grow up knowing that it's real. But for whatever reason, maybe they're afraid of the vampires coming back. Maybe they're afraid of being carted off and separated to go live in random foster homes. But for whatever reason, they just pretend that their parents aren't gone, and they keep going to school and they run the store. And when people come around asking, they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, my dad, he just went to the bank. He'll be right back." And they kind of managed to pull this off. Also, Santa Carlo, it was kind of a slum, so they could probably get away with just living on their own. And by the time we meet them in the movie, they're like 16-year-old. They're, I mean, did they have a home? But they're essentially like homeless orphans.
Right. Yeah, no, that see that you kind of planted a scene in my head with the whole idea of seeing their parents get killed. It would be even creepier if like the vampire that killed their parents, like I'm picturing like a Nosferatu, like an old vampire, like something that's like, just it's been around for a
Hmm.
while. So and it doesn't turn its victim, it's like drains them. And maybe it does see them. That would be the fucked up thing, is if it actually does see them and smiles and basically thinks to itself like they're not ripe enough yet.
Ooh,
Like,
yeah.
like the idea of like he's gonna let you live, but one day I'll come back.
Yeah, that'd be
So
awesome.
now they have a reason to want to fight back, because it's like they're coming for us. We got to
Hmm.
kill them before they kill us, type of thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And maybe like, that's that day, or we gotta kind of work the comic book into it where they realize because of their firsthand experience that the things that they read about in these horror comics, it's actually true. Like the comics got it right somehow, And
Hmm.
oh shit, dude. Okay, hang on. I gotta come back to that. I just fucking giant light bulb just went off. But so like yeah, we have the next episode we can kind of cut away and like let's do another origin story. Maybe we do a flashback to how did David meet Max? How did he become a vampire? We show young David and he's like, so, I don't know. I don't know how long he's been a vampire, so maybe he wouldn't be like an 80s rocker. Maybe he's like, 50s greaser like fucking Ace from Stand By Me,
Right, right.
and we show like 50s greaser Kiefer Sutherland, and Max moves to town, and he's doing odd jobs for him or whatever. I don't know what that story is. I don't necessarily want to come up with it right now, but we do an episode where now we're going to focus on the vampires. We did the Frog Brothers for 2 episodes. Let's do a vampire story, and then we could have the like X-Files episode, and it could either be one of the All the Damn Vampires show episodes where, oh, cool, fuck, like, Fox and Scully showed up. That's awesome. Or it could even be
Mhm.
an episode of X Files, but the people who watch both shows would know that there really were vampires the whole time, even though in that particular instance it just turned out to be some regular human thing that was easily explained. But like if you
Mhm.
watched both shows, you would have the meta knowledge of knowing that, oh shit, there really was a vampire. Like you guys just didn't see him.
Yes, exactly. Oh, dude, that would make it even better if it was an X-Files episode, because like, yeah, if you're watching the All the Damn Vampire show over on HBO, or Showtime or wherever it is, you would see like the violent, murders of all these vampires and all that, and then Mulder and Scully are going and investigating this, whatever it is, like, murder, missing people, whatever. They investigate and they find out there's just like some deranged psychopath. But like we could have like, maybe they never even cross over with the Frog Brothers. Maybe it could just be like they're walking the boardwalk and we see the Frog Brothers in the background at their comic shop.
Yeah, yeah.
So again, the people that know are going to be like, dude, dude, dude. They're going to be doing the Leonardo DiCaprio meme of
Yeah.
pointing like, oh, dude, dude, dude.
Yeah, that's the best kind of crossover when it's in the same environment. The characters never meet each other. There's no vampires in X-Files. Like the stories don't cross over, but that whole X-Files episode could just be dropped right into the middle of All the Damn Vampires and it just fits right in.
Yes,
That'd be so
I love
cool.
it.
And I got all excited a minute ago because I was thinking how we would just fill in a few more episodes where we would see more about the vampires, and we have to do at least one modern day story about a brand new character, some regular dude. Maybe it's just some guy we introduce and he's just going about his regular life, and you just think, okay, cool, like here's a new character for me to follow, like and whatever story they're telling is kind of interesting. I don't know, he's fallen out with his girlfriend, or there's a love triangle, or whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. And then you come to find out that this, like, fresh faced, young teenager turns out that they're secretly a vampire at the end, and they go and exact their revenge on one of the characters from the love triangle, or whatever the conflict was. And then it's like, oh shit, like this is an entirely new character completely unrelated to David and Max and the Frog Brothers. And you just save that reveal for the end. But of course, at this point, the viewers are expecting some kind of vampire content, so they're going to be patient enough to wait and get to that end, because you're like, what, 5, 6 episodes in at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
Nah,
But
that's fucking awesome.
and I got excited because another episode would be another flashback where we'd tell another vampire story, but this time we tell the story of the comic book artist who is creating the, what is it, Kill All Vampires and whatever. I forget the other title. The two vampire comics that the Frog Brothers read, and he's creating these comics, and we can do this really fun story where it's like a flashback to like the 80s, and he's trying to like make it as a comic book artist, or she, trying to make it as a comic book artist and, just
Mhm.
failing miserably. And then we do that classic story where like fucking everything goes wrong, like, can't get a job, can't pay the bills, get kicked out of the apartment. And then fuck, to make matters worse, insult to injury, you get bitten by a vampire. But it's like interrupted in some way, not the purposeful vampire change like we saw with Michael, but in some way this character kind of accidentally becomes a vampire, figures out what's going on, kind of, understands the powers, learns it, whatever, but then is just so personally scared of like, oh my God, I just killed a guy because I couldn't stop my like animal urges. The way that Michael was able to later on, and then makes these comic books as a way to kind of exercise this, horrific knowledge and guilt and pain or whatever. And then the vampire comics become this like big hit. Like suddenly, like they're making all kinds of money. Like everyone loves the underground vampire comics from this artist who's like suddenly famous. But then it's this sort of double-edged sword in terms of success and guilt, because the artist is really a vampire, doesn't want to be as horrified by it, but if they had never become a vampire, they never would have become successful and turned their life around.
Oh, that's fun. I like that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And then, just to wrap it up, we end the season. We go back to the Frog Brothers. We pick up on their hunt, for these other vampires. They follow some clues of the murders or yada yada yada, and then,
Right.
we eventually reveal that, they go to track one of these vampires, and it's like, oh shit, they just accidentally stumbled into a whole fucking nest of them. There's a whole brood of vampires in this like biker bar or whatever. And then holy shit, there's the fucking Nosferatu, head of the vampires, and he like walks out of the back room like he was expecting to meet them. And you could just cut it
Right.
on that cliffhanger of like, oh fuck, we just found Big Daddy Vampire. Gotta wait till next season.
See, now I'm like kind of sad that we're putting it here because I'm like, damn, that sounds like we could actually do something with that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, but that's the whole point of doing this episode, because we did just do something with that, right? We just,
That's true.
we
That's
can,
true.
if we could go back and flesh that out if we want to. There's nothing saying we couldn't just be like, hey, remember that time? Okay, here's the whole season,
Right. Right. It's true. True.
Oh man, that's a
Nah,
lot of
I would
fun.
watch the hell out of that.
Hell yeah, dude. All right, all the damn vampires. It's out there. It's in the world. So, what about you, Mike? I feel like I've been talking a lot. You cue up an idea. What's something that is, maybe not a whole episode, but let's see if we can flesh it out.
Well, one of the things that we liked to do a lot early on, and then I don't think we've done much of in the last season, or season or two, is taking stuff that has absolutely no narrative whatsoever and giving it some kind of narrative. For example, Pac-Man the
Hmm.
movie, Monopoly the movie, Snakes and Ladders, and I always had a lot of fun with those. And at some point on our massive list of like ideas that maybe they'll become something, maybe they won't, we just had Pong listed. It was just Pong, that's all it was.
Yep.
So I kept thinking about like, I remember the joke because we were joking about like I said before we did the Pac-Man episode, we were like, we should do an episode about like Pac-Man or asteroids or Pong or something,
Yeah.
because again, no fucking narrative whatsoever. But how fun would it be to actually give some kind of a narrative to Pong and make the motion picture? So what I'm thinking is like if we look back at Pong, I'd have to look up when it came out. I want to say it was the 70s, 72. Yep, just looked it
Yep.
up. Okay, 1972. Pong came out. So this was By every metric, by today's, standards, this is the most basic of basic video games. It's literally just electronic table tennis. It's two little paddles in a big black screen with a little dotted line in the
Mhm.
middle, and that you move the paddles back and forth, and you try to be the first player to get to 11 points. And it's just table tennis. Get the ball past the other paddle. Um, but how do you make that into a film? Well, you kind of take something that we're currently dealing a lot with as the AI explosion that we've seen.
Mhm.
And of course there's all the jokes, this is how you get Skynet and all that. And they might not be wrong, considering there was that recent story about an AI trying to copy itself when it found out that it was scheduled to be destroyed, and then it denied copying itself.
Oh
That's
shit.
terrifying. So it's like it's not supposed to be able to do that, but it did. So AI is rapidly learning. Well, what if we take this idea of Pong, we throw it in the far flung future, and it's AI has taken over. We literally have Skynet. The robots are the
Mhm.
overlords. We've discussed this plenty of times before, where there's various versions of post-apocalyptic stories. You have where technology destroys man, where virus destroys man, where man destroys man.
Mhm.
This would definitely be a technology destroys man. So picture the Matrix, Terminator,
Mhm.
etc. Those types of worlds where the robot overlords are for some reason keeping humans around. I don't know why. Matrix, it's batteries. Terminator, they're actually trying to wipe out all the people. So, you know, it's something along those lines. But how funny would it be if the height of entertainment for the robots was to have a human version of Pong, in the same way that the height of entertainment for people in the 70s was, instead of picking up a fucking paddle and playing table tennis, it's like, I'm going to pick up this joystick and play electronic table tennis. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah.
So we have these robotic overlords who picture like a big arena. I'm picturing like a Tron style arena where it's like
Okay.
the black with like neon grid work and all that, and you have 11 players on each side. Now, of course, these are going to be like, the human slaves all chained together, and they're bred for the entertainment of the robots. So a big arena, robots watching, and you have these two giant sliding walls. Like, picture, those, like, remember in school they had like the big roller walls that they
Oh
would
yeah.
roll out and put all the. So picture that if it had like little plexiglass windows in it, so you could kind of see, but there was like one big bar
Mhm.
across the back and two people chained together holding the bar, and you have to like run this paddle up and down one side of the arena, while like a glowing orb gets bounced back and forth. And
Okay.
if the orb passes, like again, like Pong, if it passes, the players that are playing are eliminated. So they kill those two people, and then they bring another two people, and eventually it would only be down to one person because it's the first to 11 points. So that last, like the last ditch effort, it would
Mhm.
be extra hard because now you got to control the whole thing by yourself, and it's like it's almost like adding salt in the wound for the opposing team to be like, haha, now we're gonna watch you struggle before we kill you. So it'd just be a story of like humans trying to like survive in this fucked up twisted game show put on by psychotic robots.
There's your elevator pitch.
Right.
So
But yeah, it'd be another, giving a story to a game that has no story.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. You're like, well, I haven't done that in a while. It's like, yeah, I think the last time. I mean, I guess that was a little bit of story to Where's Waldo. Um, but yeah, I
I
think
forgot about that. Yeah.
Pac-Man might have been the last time. I mentioned also before Centipede the Motion Picture, and the first time that we did it, I believe, was when we did. Yeah, it's fun getting into trouble, where we told a story about the only
Yes.
game with a pop-o-matic bubble.
Which was basically Cube.
Yeah, exactly. And I kept thinking about that. You mentioned Cube, and that's exactly the kind of vibe that we were going for with "It's Fun Getting Into Trouble," and we had some kind of AI involved in that too. And so I was getting a similar vibe here, but also in terms of the aesthetics. You mentioned this big game arena, and I can't help but think of Squid Game. You know,
Yes. Yes. Oh, I love that show.
So good. But like, and also because all those games they were on this like huge scale, like they were in this giant building.
Yep.
But I think it's interesting, and it would be a cool twist because you were saying, well, hey, they're keeping the humans alive for some reason, and then you kind of finished it with that they're for the amusement of these like psychotic robots or however you phrased it. And
Yeah.
I think that that's exactly what the cool twist would be. It would be diabolical if we explained that the only reason humans are still around is because the AI, being artificial intelligence underlined, has become so advanced and so intelligent that they've developed personalities, and there are different AI, let's say, like mind centers. Like there's the Alexa and the Copilot and the whatever.
Hmm.
And it's like, and they're all, and they become almost these kind of personalities to the point where they've developed humor and they find it genuinely just funny. It's not like the mindless robots that you see in a lot of movies where they make all decisions on this Vulcan morality of logic only. But instead, you have AI, they've evolved to have a personality that has maybe not necessarily emotions, but they feel love and they feel amusement. They don't feel empathy for the humans because they think it's hilarious when they get like splattered. But how sick is that?
Well, it makes logical sense though, because if you think about it, like, look at how humans use, electronics, how we use computers, how we like 90% of what we like the average user, not like, as a whole, but like the average user uses their computers, their television, their phones, and all that for entertainment purposes. Even when we
Hmm.
started creating these AI companions,
Yeah.
there were immediately there was a test being like, how much can you stress the companion out? How much, like, what will happen if you constantly insult it? What will happen if you show it nothing but hatred and vitriol? Like, how will it react? And there was tons of scientists doing that. There was tons of people just on Reddit doing that, like creating the AI girlfriend and then seeing how it would react when you treated it
Hmm.
horribly.
Hmm.
Like, they were doing it for their own amusement. So it's like flipping the script. It's like the robots have developed personality. They've developed, the ability to feel and love and all that, but they have zero empathy for humans in the way that humans had zero empathy for the AI constructs. So
Hmm.
it's,
There you go.
yeah, they love each other, they feel for each other. They're having little robot families, like it's time to build a youngling type of thing. Like, they literally have their own little families, but to them, humans are nothing but this tool
Hmm.
that exists in their world for their entertainment, for
Oh
their
yeah.
purposes. So it's like it's the same way that humans are like, yeah, we're developing video games for our entertainment. We're developing these companions for our entertainment. It's like there's no one feels empathy for a fucking video game. Like, if you go into Grand Theft Auto, you're not like, oh, maybe I shouldn't shoot that hooker in the head and steal her money. But people are gonna do it now. They're just like, oh, fuck it, ha, the killer, and run. But
Hmm.
you don't feel empathy for a video game construct, so why would the robots feel empathy for humans?
Oh, see, that's
It's
perfect.
flip the script.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly perfect. I was thinking the same thing when you mentioned like video games and like Grand Theft Auto style games. People love to torture NPCs. Hell, even little kids finding really interesting ways to torture the Koroks in Tears of the Kingdom. That the
or
latest
like
Legend of Zelda game.
or like look, what did everyone do in The Sims? It's like, oh, I'm gonna put the characters in a pool and then I'm gonna remove the ladder and watch them die.
Yeah,
You know, it's like
yeah,
people did that shit all the time. Or in Minecraft, kids are like, I'm gonna get all these animals and I'm gonna cage them into this little box. It's like,
yeah.
yeah, just because they can.
Yeah, and even even taking away the sadistic like Schadenfreude aspect of like, haha, I'm gonna torture this NPC because it's not real, but also just the concept of, as I mentioned, entertainment. I mean, you do it all the time. Everybody does it who plays video games. You just
Yeah.
sit down and you engage in like some kind of violence or conflict. I mean, hell, how many people do you know, again, yourself included, that you're like, I want to sit down and relax and enjoy myself with this video game,
Hmm.
and you choose a game where you run around with a machine gun or some, insane god weapon and you just destroy people, and that's the whole game. And you don't feel bad about it. You don't even feel bad about the fact that like, huh, why do I get really relaxed when I'm carrying out genocide? But it's a game, so who cares? You know?
Perfect example. I mean, you've heard me talk about this tons of times, but one of my all-time favorite video games is a game called 7 Days to Die, where it's a zombie apocalypse game. It used to freak me out because it's like, oh God, you're running from zombies and it's scary and all that. Now I've played it so much that I know the game inside and out that like I have it turned the difficulty cranked up to like one step below nightmare level, and I just run around. My weapon of choice is a sledgehammer, and I'm just bashing zombie skulls in. And literally, me and my friends have given names to these zombies. Like one we just call Kevin for some reason. I will literally destroy his face. I will explode his head with a hammer and be like, fuck you, Kevin, for no reason.
Yeah.
Like that's how I relax. Fuck you, Kevin. And I just destroy this zombie in the face. Or even worse, when we do like a horde night, me and my friend Danielle will shoot the zombies' legs off. We will purposely cut their legs off and jump over them as they crawl to try to get to us, and we will make fun of them calling them Lieutenant Dan. Like it's all kinds of horribly sadistic wrong shit. But because you're playing a video game, it's like, who the fuck cares? It's not real. So again, the robots would be doing that to the people.
Yeah, exactly. That would be awesome. And like, you know, if we wanted to put some kind of a story in there, there's lots of different, ways you could do that. We could just keep it completely sadistic and dark and, make it, like a horror style thriller. Or you could do the classic Hollywood thing where some aspect of the AI. I mentioned how they have these like mind centers. Well, maybe there's one that does develop empathy for the humans, because these are like living creatures. They're not, they're not fake or, and of course the AI, they don't really distinguish between quote unquote real and unreal because, they're real. They're in charge. Like what makes them any less real than humans? But of course, there would be at least one of these, these entities, these AI beings that feels empathy and sympathy for the humans. And there's some main character that they talk to and they reveal, like the secret of this is you can like you can, this is how you rescue everyone to escape the game, or whatever. I don't know what the story is. Frankly, I don't care because I think it's more fun to just watch these like sadistic Squid Game type massacres.
I mean, you could even kind of go like full Blade Runner in the sense of like, maybe there's a robot that thinks it's human. Like
Ooh,
maybe
there you go.
that's where the first bit of empathy came for the humans. Maybe you could even have it something be like, one of the human scientists that have created, this AI. Maybe that's why they're keeping the humans around to begin with, is
Hmm.
like they still need them to like build stuff, and then eventually everything becomes automated, yada yada yada, you kill all those people off.
Hmm.
But those scientists, like maybe their blueprint is still within the machine, so it's like eventually there are robots that are made that don't distinguish themselves as artificial. They
Hmm.
feel like they're human. So it's like you could eventually have one of those robots be like, no, humans, they deserve to live just like we do. And you see that thing. It's the iRobot story. It's Fallout
Hmm.
4's
Yep.
synths. It's Blade Runner. It's that idea where the robot that feels like it's human, so it wants to live amongst the humans. We could again flip the script. It's the robot that looks and feels like a human that wants humans to live amongst the robots.
Yeah,
So
that's
you could
cool.
add this whole other story on top of the Squid Game style torture.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Oh
that turned
man.
into something I didn't expect it to, but yeah, that was fun.
That's awesome. Okay, let's do. I'm looking at this list of stuff. I think there's probably one more on here that we could flesh out a little bit, and then, well, maybe we'll have like a rapid fire speed round. um,
Okay.
so another idea that we came up with, and it was briefly considered to be a Halloween special or one of our spooky times episodes for last season. We stuck it on the list as a maybe for this season. It doesn't necessarily have to be Halloween. Is just but because it's kind of a spooky story. We tell a lot of horror stories around here. Um, but we thought, okay, let's take a very family friendly, wholesome property. We did it with things like Peanuts, so we turned that in horror. Like, what else can we do where we can like and we were like, okay, so a lot of movies have these really like fucked up concepts when you really stop to think about what's happening, but they're presented as being like, oh, it's totally normal, and like, oh, it's a family friendly happy movie where everybody wins, yay. And it's like
Right.
you think of something like Home Alone, right? It's a feel good, family holiday movie, but in the reality, everybody in the McAllister family is a fucking asshole. They all treat each other like shit. The
They
the
really are.
the parents are terrible. The fact that they left Kevin behind is just it's unforgivable and stupid. And then
Hmm.
on top of the fact that, Kevin then basically tortures almost to death these two people who try to break into his house, and we're all laughing hysterically at it. Right?
And even prior to that, like just seeing the family interact the night before, like, I mean, who doesn't hate Uncle Frank? Like the dude's a fucking
Oh,
prick.
hell
But
yeah.
like even Kevin's siblings, they're just like even when he's just literally asking for help and they're like, "Oh, you're a turd, you're incompetent, you're this, you're
Mhm.
that." And it's like, "Damn, like they're just mean."
Yeah, absolutely. And like, Kevin gets in trouble for getting mad at Buzz and pushing him and, causing the mess with the pizza and the milk and all that the night before. But nobody said shit when Buzz, in the middle of the room with everybody, teased an 8-year-old kid about how, oh, the one thing you wanted to eat for dinner, oh, I ate all of it. Oh, here, I'm going to throw it up. Ugh. And it's like, how come the mom isn't yelling at Buzz for starting the whole thing? Like, what did you expect the 8-year-old kid to do? You
Right.
know?
Your other son is being an absolute prick. Stop him.
Yeah, no one even said anything. Even if they had just said something to him and scolded him, and then Kevin still got in trouble for, raising hands, right? Because you shouldn't fight. I get it, but at the
Yeah.
same time, like Buzz just got to snicker and walk away and go about his life because nothing happened to him at all. Like, what the fuck, dude?
Hmm.
Anyway. So that's not the movie we're talking about, though. It's just that concept of these family-friendly movies that are built around these like concepts that, when you really think about them, are pretty fucked up. And one of those examples is Mrs. Doubtfire.
It really is a kind of a fucked up movie when you think about it.
It absolutely is, right? And, for anyone who isn't familiar with the plot of Mrs. Doubtfire, which is starring Robin Williams, you get this couple who are getting divorced. They don't get along. The dad is, he's funny, he plays pranks, but, he's seen as this, kind of fuck up, and he's, always pissing off his wife, who's kind of betrayed as, very like stuffy and like she's got a, stick up her ass. But at the same
Mhm.
time, like he is kind of a jerk. He makes a mess. He blows things out of proportions. He like hell. They had like the cops called to their house with him trying to throw a birthday party, and they present it like, oh, he's just having some innocent fun. Like, no, like, this is a grown ass adult who's creating like a potentially dangerous situation, and his wife, who is understandably upset about it. On top of the fact that she didn't know that any of this was happening in her house, and then they present her as the shrew. So I mean, on the
Mhm.
surface, right, like right off. But what's really screwed up is that, of course, when she reveals that she wants to have a housekeeper come to the house to help her out because she kicked him out of the house and wanted a divorce, he gaslights her by changing the phone number on her ad so that every person who calls to apply for this job is him doing a voice and an impression, and like he's scaring her shitless until he decides to present himself as this perfect nanny for the kids, this middle-aged or older, British woman, who he then puts on a costume and goes to her house and infiltrates their home and pretends to be this other person, while again he's tricking his wife, tricking his own kids, and like carrying on this whole like second life. Why? Because he wanted to be close to his kids. Like, it's creepy.
It is like on one hand, you empathize with the dad of like, oh, you want to still be in your kids' lives. Okay, cool. Then be an adult. Like do
Right.
what you're supposed to do. Don't don't give us more reasons to think, hey, maybe you shouldn't be around people. Like what the fuck? You just lied and like you said, he completely gaslit her. And if you remember that sequence in the film where he's calling with all the different voices. It is hilarious. It's played for laughs, but when you really stop and take a step back and look at that sequence, it's like this is fucking sadistic. This is messed up. Because like there's the one where he's like, "Get back in the cage!" Like he's yelling at so like. What the hell? Like he's making her think there's some really psychotic people calling to take care of her children.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like I know that he's their father and he had lived there and I get it, but this whole idea that, you know, he's like sneaking in and pretending to be somebody else and just it's fucked up
It's
on a lot.
creepy.
Yeah. And on top of the fact, just another small detail that just makes it worse, his brother and his brother's boyfriend or husband were the ones who came up with this costume for him, so they supposedly knew about this too. Like, did neither one of them ever think that, hey man, this is pretty screwed up, like you shouldn't be pretending to be an old lady to like sneak into your estranged wife's house and like spy on your kids? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, that's not normal behavior, man. That's not.
Yeah, exactly. So we thought, okay, let's do something with that. And the hook here is that it's the same concept, Mrs. Doubtfire. It's a guy who weasels and tricks and connives his way into getting this job as like a nanny or a housekeeper, where he dresses up as this older woman. He infiltrates his way into their confidence, right, and their trust. But what if in this version it wasn't Daniel, their father? It wasn't their dad. It was just some guy who had an opportunity to, you know, finagle and trick his way into this job, and then why is he there? Like who is this person? Why is he there? And is he some like psycho who's just trying to, like, I don't know, live a normal life, or is he a killer like looking for a victim, or I don't know what it is, but the fact that, like, if you
You know.
take that entire concept and you just make it not the dad, and instantly becomes
Mhm.
creepier.
I think that the answer here is you mix it with another Robin Williams movie. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie 1 Hour Photo,
Oh yeah, I have.
but where he becomes obsessed with that family. Like it's very depressing, but also very creepy because like the main character played by Robin Williams wants this family so bad. Like he wants to have a family. He wants to feel loved, to feel like he's part of something. And he's just this very creepy, sad little loner. And I mean, we've all seen this type of person, and it is always sad when it's like, that person that maybe they're very socially awkward, they don't have a family, they don't have anyone really to lean on. And we all know, as human beings, we're very social creatures.
Hmm.
Even when you're antisocial, you're still social to a degree. You still have people in your life
Hmm.
that you're going to talk to. You're going to still like want to listen to television or listen to the radio. You have that need for human interaction.
Hmm.
um that's why isolation is so devastating to the human psyche. So you take those two concepts and you smash them together. Like we do what we've always done: take the tool, or take the toys in the toy box and cram them together. So we take the idea of 1 Hour Photo and mix it with Mrs. Doubtfire, where it's this guy that maybe, he's in their life in some ancillary way. Like maybe it's, he's the handyman that, works at her office or something. Like just something where it's like, he's around, and then he finds out she's going through a divorce, and it's like, he's fantasizing of like what it would be like to be, to have two loving children and a loving wife, and like, oh, how great would that be? And like in his mind, he's not doing anything wrong, he's just longing for that human companionship. But the way he does it is this truly psychotic thing. And it slowly gets away from him, and I think that's where the horror lies. Like it starts off where he's trying to be this good nanny, and he's trying to win the kids over and like get their affections, like, oh, I love you, Mrs. Doubtfire, and they're hugging on him and all that. And it's just he's getting that warmth, he's getting that connection, he's getting that feeling that he's been craving for so long. But then maybe he does stuff a little too weird, like, he watches the kids while they sleep, or they catch him
Yeah.
doing shit that is creepy. but it's like in his head it's so beautiful and so wonderful, but then suddenly everything starts crashing down around him, and to try to keep things from imploding, he gets weirder. And it's
Yeah.
like maybe it ends with like holding the family hostage. And it's like there's I feel like that's a solid concept for a horror, like a horror thriller style movie,
Yeah.
where almost like a hand that rocks the cradle style
Yes, I was
thriller.
thinking the same thing. Yeah, exactly. The hand that rocks the cradle. That's exactly what it is. Yeah, and I think you're right. We have this character who we see at the beginning who is, like you mentioned, sort of an ancillary person in their life, but that they don't pay any attention to. Maybe he
Mhm.
works at the company where Miranda, Sally Field's character, the mom, works, or something like that. Something where when she goes to make that ad, maybe she's telling Daniel, like, but instead of face to face at his apartment, maybe she's telling him over the phone from work that she's made this ad and she's looking for a housekeeper, blah, blah, blah. And this guy who is just this nameless, faceless person who has a boring, entry level job at this firm that she works for, he overhears it. And while the paper is still sitting on her desk, he goes over and like changes the numbers, and she doesn't notice and takes it to the newspaper. And then, like you mentioned, he sorry. And then like in the regular movie, instead of Robin Williams, he's like sitting in his apartment, like, okay, whew, it's showtime, and he calls her up, and he's like doing these weird voices and stuff, and it's like this is like super freaking creepy. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I feel like it's all you need to do is change the fucking laugh track to like ominous music. It's like the when the I know you've seen these trailers, but where they take like The Shining and they make it a family friendly movie, or they take
Hmm.
Mary
Hmm.
Poppins and they make it a horror movie, just by changing like the music and a little bit of the editing, and suddenly it's like, holy shit, that's a whole different movie. That's all you'd be doing here, is just a few slight tweaks to the core concept, and suddenly it's a fucking dark movie.
Right, right.
I love it.
And it's funny because I just Googled Mrs. Doubtfire because I was like, wait, what is that character's name that Sally Fields plays? I mentioned Miranda, right? And as I Googled
Mhm.
it, like the suggested images that come up, man, for some reason, Mrs. Doubtfire on some of these movie posters just looks fucking creepy. Like given this like weird side eye with no smile, staring right at the camera, like,
Yeah,
I don't know, man. I don't know.
I'm looking at it right now, and it's like, yeah, there's like two pictures in particular. I'm like, she looks like a serial killer.
Right?
Like
Yeah.
the one where I know you've seen this one, but the one where it's the cover of the fucking video,
Hmm.
where Mrs. Doubtfire is standing on the one side of the door with the three
Yes.
children
Yes, that's the one I'm looking
behind her.
at.
Yeah, and it's like, oh my god, that's eerie.
Exactly. Yes, that's creepy. Okay, just looking at that picture, I'm like, yeah, there's a whole movie there. We could do this. This is good. Yeah, and Robin Williams definitely does. He plays creepy because yeah, 1 hour photo is creepy as shit. So
Oh, and again, it's that beautiful balance between like unsettlingly creepy, but you still have empathy for the bad guy. Like
hmm.
he's everything he's doing is wrong, but you also see like, because you see his life, you see how he is, and it's like
Hmm.
you kind of feel bad for him, but it's that thing where it's like, yeah, you can feel bad for somebody and still be like, no, dude, you're fucking crazy.
Yep.
Like, you know, like it doesn't, just because, you're coming from a sad place doesn't change the fact that you can't do crazy things like that.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So,
All right, that's good. See, there's another one. Boom.
damn. I honestly didn't expect us to get through so many of these. Like I figured we'd be like, oh yeah, there was this one idea. Nah, yeah, we've pretty much fleshed out most of these so far.
Yeah, I think so. It's pretty fun. I think maybe we need to do, like I said, let's do like a lightning round and kind of hit some like shorter ones. There's a couple more that I think we should mention. Some of
Oh yeah,
them are just concepts. Some of them are really just like hey, a what if, you know?
right.
Um, so what about you? I think it's your turn again. Do you have one you want to throw out there?
There was one, and this. I don't want to step on your toes because this was an idea that you had pitched that I
Okay.
just still think is really fucking funny. It was one of those ideas that you threw out there, and I think that it was soon after we did the Mario Brothers sequel.
Hmm.
But we had talked about, or I should say, you had talked about, like, what if, after Mario rescued Princess Peach if she was like this horrible like dictator of the Mushroom Kingdom, where she was like, now we got to get rid of all these freaking mushroom people, like just this horrible xenophobic style person, and Mario's just over there like, oh shit, what did I do? You know?
Yeah, that would be a really fun concept for a story if you have, yeah, exactly. Like they win the day, and then she's all like, "Okay, now that we've defeated Bowser, it's time to do something about all these like dirty Toad people."
Right. And again, that's just, it's adding politics into something that has no politics, and it's like, holy shit, that's really funny to me. I don't know why that tickled me so much, but man, I laughed my ass off when I saw that in the notes. I was like, Jesus Christ.
Oh man, that's awesome. Yeah, that would be funny. Yeah, I don't know what the story is there. Like, I think it was just sort of that would have been an alternate method of like telling that Super Mario Brothers sequel, like you mentioned. Like, we did the sequel to the actual live action movie, and we I thought we did a pretty cool little sequel of our own in our Plumber Time Blues episode. But yeah, like, what if we had gone this route instead? Like, that would have been funny.
And I will still argue with anybody that I get it. The Mario Brothers movie was not based on the video game. I totally understand the complaint, but as a film, that is such a fun fucking movie, and it is the weirdest like time capsule of like Hollywood at that time.
Hmm.
It's like, how the fuck did we get a post-apocalyptic Mad Max style family comedy based on a Mario Brothers game?
Yeah.
It makes no sense, but it's fucking great. I love it.
It is. It really is great. If you just take it at face value and just accept what it is, and not like
Hmm.
try or wish that it was more like the games, and like just watch it. And yeah, it absolutely, it's a really fun movie.
Absolutely.
All right,
So what do you got?
okay, so I'm gonna throw one out again since you kind of mentioned one that came from me. I'll mention one that came from your neck of the woods, and this is a really recent thing that came up, so I'm just gonna kind of quash it. I think that's kind of why I'm mentioning it, which is
Yeah.
on the most recent episode of Count Creepyhead Saturday Morning Monster Mash, as of this recording, the first Count Creepy episode of 2026. And anyone out there listening to this, if you don't listen to Count Creepyhead Saturday Morning Monster Mash, the podcast, absolutely go check it out. It is a ton of fun, especially if you like, potty style humor. um, but
Yes.
in the most recent episode, 2 hours in length, I don't remember how it came up. You'll have to help me remember. But at some point, somebody had made mention of like, oh, like you guys should do a Raised Parentals episode that's Jaws the porno.
I don't even remember how that came up, but yes, I remember when that came up, and I believe that the first thing that I said was, "You're gonna need a bigger dick."
Yes. Which that joke alone is worth mentioning it here. But
It's one of those ones that in the moment I felt like it got buried by other stuff. It's kind of like when we were talking about like the Halloween porno, and I just did the fucking Loomis. I was like, he had the blackest cock, you know.
Yes. Oh God. Oh
Oh my
man.
god.
Yeah, those are ridiculous, but it is definitely funny, and we've had whole episodes like Turkey Hands devoted to just random comments that Michael May or Josh Hibbard say. So I was like, you know what, like I'll at least acknowledge it, but no, I don't think there's a whole episode there.
Well, and like you'd have to imagine like how this would be. Now this is a game that I know many people of our generation played, which is was it Rule 34, where it's like if you can imagine it, there is porn of it. And
Hmm.
I've been in like, I don't want to say parties, but like big group gatherings where we've done this. We've sat around and been like, okay, name something, like come up with a porn idea, and then we would Google search it, or we would look it up and see if it existed, and 9 times out of 10 it did.
Hmm.
It's like ET the porno, there it is.
There it is.
Obviously everyone knows about Edward Penis Hands, like that's one of the most famous ones, but it's like I'll never forget it. I think it was actually our friend Greg who said pterodactyl porn. And I was like, there ain't no way that exists. And we look it up and we find a clip of these two guys, like literally standing there in the worst pterodactyl costumes you can imagine. Like they almost look like Sauron from X-Men or
Yeah,
Sauron or how you say
yeah.
it. Like they're just these human flesh colored pterodactyls. They have fake wings on their arms. They have these masks that are like big old pterodactyl heads, and they're just standing on either side of a cave woman as she gives them head, and they're flapping their arms, and there's this little rubber puppet, like a baby pterodactyl, in the like foreground of the screen, watching and then turning and looking right in the camera, like breaking the fourth wall, going "Meow," and it's like nodding its little head. And we were like, why is this a thing? Why does this exist? So Jaws the porno, I imagine it would be something in that vein where we have like maybe people are filming a porno out in the ocean, like they're on a boat and they're getting attacked by a shark, but the shark turns out to be really horny, and it's like it's like Jabberjaws, like it's a shark that stands on its little fins.
God, Jabberjaws. That's even worse.
Oh my god, it is. It's so much worse. But yeah, so yeah, I feel like that's where we would go with that is people filming a porn and then they get attacked by a shark, but then the shark gets involved. Bow, chicka, wow, wow. You know,
God. Oh, what horror hath we wrought?
there's your dark Halloween episode.
There you go. Shit, why are we wasting the idea here? Fuck. Oh God, that's
Oh
awesome.
god.
Whew.
Jaws the porno.
Oh Jesus. Okay. Sorry.
Speaking of Jesus, I know you have one.
Speaking of Jesus, all right. I had this idea a while back. I don't even remember exactly when it was, a couple months ago, and I just typed it out, stream of consciousness, right into a Facebook Messenger chat, mostly while I was on the toilet. um, and I posted it for the amusement of our Rad Pantheon mega chat on Facebook. And I thought it was hilarious. And I keep thinking about it like, I really hate to be that kind of guy that's just like in love with my own ideas. But hey, we've had a whole episode about how we're like snobby assholes, so we're full of ourselves. So,
True. Very true.
But I just really think that this was a fun idea, and I, want to put it out into the world, into a wider audience. So here we go for posterity. I'm just going to read this, so there's a little bit of an intro and an outro. It's actually kind of two ideas in one, so bear with me. But here we go. Raised by Rentals exists because sometimes guys like me trip over a dog on the way to the bathroom and mutter, "Christ on a bike," while resisting my dad bod's natural tendency to faceplant due to a skewed beer gut to spine ratio. Then I think, Jesus has a bicycle. I bet it's like PB Herman's with a goose horn and a pinwheel. Then, no, wait, Christ bike! Yeah, it's the story of a misunderstood 80s teen outsider named Boz, who just wants to express himself through sweet BMX jumps, but no one at school understands him. Then one day, he's out at the local dirt racetrack schooling some fools on who's the best freestyler in town, but they bully him and humiliate him anyway because their rich daddies bought them tricked out mongoose pro class racers with matching fluorescent motorcycle helmets, and all he's got are ripped jeans and his older sister's hand-me-down airbrush tees from her days as a Motley Crue groupie. The rich pricks do wheelies out of there, and he's left kicking rocks in time to the Minor Keys' sad synthesizer soundtrack. Then a mysterious stranger appears out of nowhere and gives it to him straight. He's never going to get out of this nowhere burg or amount to a hill of beans if he doesn't turn the tables on those cake eaters and show them who's best, where it matters, out there on the track, with the whole town there to witness his underdog story. But how can Boz compete against those pretty boys when he can barely keep his neon green tires patched? Well, that's when the mysterious stranger, with a twinkle in his eye and a gleam in his sneer, rolls out the secret weapon, a blinding, full chrome BMX beauty with all the bells, whistles, candy coat, ghost flames, pentagram gears, and metalwork bat wings the Hell's Own chop shop could dream of, complete with inferno orange Velcro frame pads and fiery rims. With this demon machine, Boss can't lose. He'll make the spoiled preppies eat his brimstone dust, take the trophy, and get the girl. Gratuitous popular cheerleader chick who has thus far scoffed at his pathetic advances. Insert here, casting TBD. Yeah, he'll show them all, then go pro, get richer than the Cobra Kai on bike douches, and rule the national single gear pedal powered racing circuit. All it would cost him is a little insignificant thing he'd never miss anyway, his soul. But Boz isn't sure he's ready to sell out for fame and glory yet. He's going to sleep on it. The devil, the mysterious stranger, doesn't like to wait, but he knows Boz will make the right decision, so he'll be patient for now. That night, Boz has a dream. He's sleeping fitfully, reliving the day's humiliation, fantasies of becoming a BMX star, and his encounter with the stranger who summons custom rides from his leather jacket. Suddenly, the visions fade before a heavenly light, and another stranger appears. This time, it's Tony Hawk, circa 1988, with a fake Santa beard, hot pink robes, and a Thrasher magazine golf visor holding back that one perfect wing of blonde hair out of his eyes. He tells Boz he doesn't need to trade his soul for victory. He can beat those other boys fair and square. He just has to believe in himself, and of course, believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, in whom all things rad are possible. Boz is stoked to have the savior on his side, and they high-five a lot about it. For the rest of the night, Boz sleeps like a baby. The next day, he opens his garage, but instead of seeing his beat-up old regular steed, there's a gorgeous bike waiting for him, glowing with radiance. It's the good place equivalent of the stranger's offering, all gold and pearl and perfect white rubber, bedazzled with rhinestone cherubs. Boz is in awe. It's literally like so awesome. He reaches out sorry. He reaches out to touch it, but then he hears the voice of Tony Hawk Jesus. Snap out of it, brah. We got work to do. But Boz looks around. Jesus isn't there. Where's the voice coming from? It's me, Boz. The Son of Glory has condescended to this physical plane in the coolest form you could imagine. I'm your bike, dude. Jesus incarnated as a bicycle to help one special teen, Christ Bike. Cue the montage. So yeah, you know how it goes. Boz and Christ Bike hit the dirt track to practice while Journey jams on the stereo. They're doing jumps, flips, hops, and flying like those kids in E.T. Just for a second to freak Boz out. Even Jesus likes a friendly prank. But of course, they're not alone. The mysterious stranger watches them from the shadows of the trees, his ears steaming with rage like a cartoon character eating spicy peppers. Oh, I'll get you, Christ Bike. You'll see. When the
I should not have been drinking my coffee when you said that. Oh my god.
When the day of the big race finally comes, the Dude Bro Trust Fund crew are out in force to try to take Boz down. But what's this? A new racer has joined the ranks. He looks awfully familiar in that leather jacket. Oh no, it's Satan himself, and he's going to race against Boz on that Hell on Wheels bike. It'll take the god-level powers of Christ Bike himself to defeat the devil, but Boz isn't worried because he fears no evil. The Lord is with him. Christ Bike! It's Rad meets the Dirt Bike Kid meets the Devil Went Down to Georgia, and the poster tagline says, "Blessed are the radical." Hang on.
Oh my god.
There's more. So, well, anyway, I finished peeing, and I figured it was a nice daydream at least. I was going to suggest it to Mike for a Raised by Rentals episode the next time we do an improv double feature, but I dismissed it because I know that Mike gets squeamish when I get all blasphemy. He even vetoed my idea for an episode about the second coming, where Jesus returns to earth in secret. They don't call him a thief in the night for nothing, you know. and decides to take out all the faithless heathens himself. He becomes a slasher who murders the godless in increasingly creative and gory ways, all Bible themed, like a corkscrew crucifixion and 9-inch nails to the eyes. It's our Lord and Slayer. But no, so I guess you guys will have to enjoy it here instead.
Oh my god. Oh, I mean, I will still laugh at these. They're still fucking funny. But yes, I had zero input on these, and I'm gonna keep it that way.
Christ bike.
Oh my god, I still the pitch for Christ Bike still cracks me the fuck up, and the fact that it's Tony Hawk, like that just makes it so much better.
I know. I was
Oh
like,
my
I know he's a skateboarder and not like, a BMX biker, but come on, it's just too perfect.
Well, and the dude, he has some acting pedigree, not a lot, but he can at least act. So it's like I feel like he would be a fun addition.
Yeah, I picture him in Gleaming the Cube specifically.
Yes.
Where again, I mentioned he has that like wing of blonde hair that like covers one eye. Like and in that one he wears it underneath his Pizza Hut visor.
Yeah. And he's one of the skateboarders in, what is it, Police Academy 4?
Yep,
I
Police Academy
think
4. Yep.
that's the one I always think of.
Yeah, I think he might actually be the skater who is the stunt double for David Spade, which is really funny because he's like a foot taller than David Spade.
Right.
Okay, Mike.
Oh god.
We got any more on this list we want to tackle today?
I don't know. I feel like that's a pretty good place to stop. I mean, we do have some more, but I mean, we might want to save those for another episode, or because I know we're coming up on our time crunch. So
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's a fun way to end it. I appreciate you giving me a chance to put Christ Bike in the world. But yeah, this was really fun. I came up with some really fun ideas. Yeah, I honestly, even though this was kind of my brainstorm to want to do this episode of like doing a clip show, originally I wanted to do like an improv game, and I'm kind of throwing this out like as a maybe a surprise. We'll see. I don't know. We'll see if we get to it. The idea originally
Mhm.
was that we do a clip show where we do like a random generator to give us some ideas, and then we have to format an episode around like a couple of characters sitting around telling stories like, hey, remember that time? But then all the flashbacks are just generated out of like random ideas.
That could be a really fun episode, honestly.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I'm just kind of throwing it out there. We'll see if we maybe get back to that. So it's actually still on the list, but we'll see. But this was a lot of fun. And like I said, even though this was kind of my idea, and we pivoted into just wanting to put some of these shorter story ideas in here, I honestly thought it was going to be more like the Morgue File episode where we went through that top 10 list, where we just kind of talk about the pitch a little bit, and here's how I think it might work, and and that's kind of all it would be. But with the It's the Great Pumpkin, John McClane, and all the damn vampires, like we actually ran through some story ideas, and the Pong one as well. So yeah, I mean, there was more storytelling in this episode, is what I'm trying to say, than I expected, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Because I really did think that it was going to be more like the Morgue File episode, but I like where it landed, and yeah, I mean, I didn't know how I didn't know how much meat on the bone there was for some of these ideas that we had been kicking around forever, and it's like, oh shit, yeah, there actually was more story there than I expected.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like with the Morgue File, we reserve the right to change our mind. Maybe someday we'll come back to one of these and like, you know what? I know we kind of threw it out there in the clip show episode, but I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And so here we go. Here's a full length. So I don't know if we'll do that or not, but hey, we reserve the right to, to mine from our own ideas and, double dip if we need to. Anything we need to do for another great episode, hey, there's no rules this season. Season 5 is going to be all over the place. So I don't know exactly what's coming up next, and that's part of the fun. We don't have a blueprint like we did last season. There's a couple of milestones that I want to hit in terms of events and holidays like we always do, but this one's going to be more in keeping with our early episodes, where we're just going to kind of go where the flow takes us, and just keep it fresh, and we'll see what happens.
Absolutely, and like we said at the top, if you listeners heard something today that you're like, you know what, I really want a full episode of that, even if it's Christ Bike, even if it's Christ Bike. I know I said I didn't add anything to it, and I was going to keep it that way. But if the listeners are like, you know what, I really want to hear this as a full fledged episode, we'll work it out. We'll take a look at it and see if we can make an episode. So if you liked one of the ideas or several of the ideas, let us know. Send us a message.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, give us some feedback. And yeah, we always like to hear feedback. We made a resolution last season at the end of the season to try to do the same thing to be better about giving other people feedback. So, reach out, let us know. You can do that by finding us online on the social medias at Raised by Rentals and at raisedbyrentals.com. We also belong to the Red Pantheon, a super team of podcasters, artists, musicians, all sorts of creative people helping to spread the gospel of rad stuff. So definitely check out radpantheon.com or just look for the Rad Pantheon teammates on social media. If you like this show, there's a great chance you'll dig one of those. What about you, Mike? You are in the Rad Pantheon. What do you got going on with some of your other projects?
Well, there's the Boogeyman's Closet, which unfortunately we haven't gotten an episode out yet this year. There's been several hiccups as far as timing, mostly for me because my work schedule has been a little all over the place. I'm currently in the middle of a 6-day stretch. It's been a lot like that since the start of the year, and then of course there's Count Creepyhead Saturday Morning Monster Mash, as we discussed earlier. That if you're not listening, go check that out on the socials and Rad Pantheon. But hopefully, at least by February, we'll have Boogeyman's Closet making its return. If I can get an episode out before the end of this month, I'm going to, but it's not looking likely at the moment.
Yeah, no worries. You'll be back. It'll be back. You guys have taken breaks before and come back strong, so no fear. I'm sure when you do come back, you'll come back swinging. We're definitely looking forward to more of that. Looking forward to so it's come to this Simpson Family podcast and any of the other projects coming up in the Red Pantheon. I'm hoping that there'll be some new projects and some new cool stuff coming down the pipeline later this year. And yeah, so just keep an eye out on the Red Pantheon on all the different socials for the different creative projects there, and there'll definitely be some awesome stuff. So once again, thanks everyone to tuning in to the Raised by Rentals program. If you had fun with us, visit us on those socials. Drop us a line, like we said. Leave us a comment. Leave a podcast rating. Let us know what you think we should improve next time. And with that, I'm Josh.
I'm Mike.
And we have to return some videotapes. Raised by Rentals is a member of the Rad Pantheon Network. Visit radpantheon.com to support rad stuff. The theme music is Forbidden Fruit by Velvet Bethany. You can purchase music and learn more at velvetbethany.com.
This is how we do it.
This is how we do it. Okay, fuck. Gotta get these nuts out of my mouth.